Hell in Dnipro, Russian counterattacks territories in Donetsk region, and the most beautiful cat in the country. This is TSN Online. My name is Natalia Ostrovska. Let's discuss this episode in the comments right under the video. And if you want to see future episodes, be sure to give us a like. Let's get started. A strike on Dnipro. A video has surfaced showing the moment a high-rise was hit. The enemy attacked the region at dawn with several waves of Shaheds and then launched ballistic missiles. In the city of Dnipro itself, private houses and a high-rise building were damaged. One person was killed and 12 are in the hospital. The total number of injured is at least 30. TSN correspondent Olha Pavlovska visited the site of the strike and will tell us more.
Swarms of Shaheds, those Iranian-made drones, attacked the region that night, and then, at dawn, powerful missiles followed, causing significant damage. One carrying a cluster munition hit a high-rise building directly.
It was very intense, explosions every 10 to 15 minutes. First Shaheds, then ballistic missiles. A terrible night, probably one of the scariest ever.
More than 350 people live here. A fire broke out and the entrance quickly filled with acrid smoke.
I am just going up
to the bathroom, and I swear 10 seconds later, suddenly it was like a hurricane. I heard screams, noise, crying, chaos. And then someone shouted to me, "Grandma is in there alone." And the smoke had already reached the 6th and 7th floors. I picked up that grandmother in my arms and carried her out.
People say they ran outside just as they were.
All the window frames and glass fell down on us. We were just in shock, grabbing whatever we could. I just ran out in my nightgown. Everything was cracking and breaking.
I went out just as I was sleeping. My friends gave me this, just a little something. Friends gave me clothes to put on. They wrapped me up.
She is injured, but she is comforted by the fact that the child was not hurt. Miss Julia says they hoped at night that the attack would be limited to Shaheds.
I went into the child's room because she was scared of the Shaheds. And then I woke up because the windows, the glass, shattered on me. There was a very powerful explosion and the child started crying. She was just terrified. The windows just fell on us, covering us like a blanket.
The entrances and cars were torn apart. Mr. Dnipro lost both his home and the van he used to make a living.
Everything is destroyed, everything is burning, everything is ruined, everything is ablaze, everything is shattered. We barely made it down on foot from the 4th floor to the 1st. Glass is flying, everything is crumbling, everything is being destroyed and burning. From the 5th to the 9th floor, everything burned down.
People only managed to take their pets and documents. People say the most precious things burned in the smoke and they are still searching for pets that got lost.
Everything was exploding all around, all the glass was shattering, there was smoke. I grabbed 2 cats and ran out in my robe.
They hid in the sofa very scared. It took a long time to get them out.
The number of injured keeps increasing. One man is in critical condition with burns on 70% of his body. Doctors are fighting for his life. The destruction is very, very extensive. Many apartment buildings that were damaged are being monitored. There is a risk of collapse for the building. The consequences of the attack and the damages are still being assessed. More than 30 apartment buildings were damaged in just one district. Dormitories, businesses, private houses, an animal shelter, 8 schools and kindergartens.
The air raid alarm went off in our class. Here is a cautious one. It was a tough night, a tough morning for the children, for the school, and for the parents.
There is destruction in the region as well. In Pavlohrad, in Novitsin, a business there caught fire. Ole Paloshko, Alexander Polish, Dnipro TSN 11.
A missile strike on Khmelnytskyi region. The occupiers struck in the morning. A 46-year-old resident of the Dnipro community was killed. 3 more locals were injured. 2 houses were destroyed. 20 buildings were damaged in Kupiansk district as a result of falling missile debris. Early in the morning, the Russians launched a combined strike on Mykolaiv region as well. Industrial infrastructure was hit and fires broke out. And in the Chernihiv community, the occupiers hit a farm with a drone. At night in Odesa region, the Russians attacked with UAVs. A building belonging to a farming enterprise caught fire. A warehouse and agricultural machinery were also destroyed. In Donetsk region, the Russians struck Kostyantynivka. A city resident was killed. 3 more were wounded. 7 apartment buildings were damaged. 2 private houses, a critical infrastructure facility, a sports complex, a shopping pavilion. 2 more people were injured in Dnipro and Pokrovsk. In the Chernihiv region, the Russians fired at a car in the evening. The driver and 2 female passengers were injured. Then the occupiers struck again. As a result, 3 medical workers were wounded. In the Olska community in the Nizhyn district, a woman was killed. During the air attack, Poland again scrambled its jets because of Russia. There, the operational command of the armed forces also reported that all necessary resources had been mobilized. In particular, fighter jets on standby were deployed, and ground-based air defense and radiological reconnaissance systems were also activated. Polish forces are on high alert, especially after the incident on September 10th, when dozens of Russian drones crossed into their airspace. Some UAVs flew as far as 300 kilometers in. Against this backdrop, the North Atlantic Alliance decided to launch an operation called Eastern Sentinel to strengthen its eastern flank. In Estonia, there is no doubt that Russia violated their airspace intentionally. Estonia's ambassador to Ukraine, Anneli Kolk, stated this in an exclusive comment to TSN, according to the diplomat. Evidence that this was a planned provocation is the fact that the Russian pilots had their transponders turned off while crossing the border. As a result, they did not respond in any way to calls to leave the airspace. Anneli Kolk believes the reason for such an action is to test the country's reaction, and she links it to the recent incident in Poland when dozens of Russian drones flew deep into the country. The Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has already summoned the acting Chargé d'Affaires of the Russian Federation and will deliver a protest to him. Meanwhile, President Zelensky called the current incident part of Russia's systematic campaign against Europe and NATO. Because 3 Russian MiG-31s crossed the Estonian border, Tallinn decided to invoke Article 4 of the North Atlantic Alliance, which allows for consultations to be convened. The aggressor's aircraft remained in Estonian airspace for as long as 12 minutes. Estonian officials admitted that since their country does not have its own fighter jets, they had to call for NATO assistance to intercept.
We do not have fighter jets, although our pilots are trained. This is part of cooperation within NATO. For every country on the eastern flank that does not have its own air force, NATO provides air defense. This time it was a rotational mission. These were Italian fighter jets. There have been violations of the airspace of Poland, Romania, and even a drone flew into Lithuania. All of these are Russian provocations. They are testing NATO countries. They are checking where our red lines are. This is also connected to Ukraine because Russian aggression there is not going according to plan. And now they are testing all NATO countries, how far we will allow them to go. But I hope we won't allow that to happen.
The enemy has advanced near 3 settlements close to the cities of Pokrovsk and Kostyantynivka in the Donetsk region. This is according to data from the analytical portal Deep State. Meanwhile, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine counted 50 enemy assaults near Pokrovsk alone in the past day, and more than 30 in the Novokuybyshevsk direction. The Russians are also trying to advance in the Lyman sector if we look at the north in the Slobozhanshchina and Kursk regions. There, the enemy carried out 9 airstrikes, dropping 27 guided bombs. In total, the General Staff recorded 165 combat engagements along the front over the past day. At the same time, they report that the defense forces managed to eliminate 1,070 occupiers the previous day, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine also announced successes by the Ukrainian army in the Dobropillia sector. There, recently, counter-offensive actions were carried out, thanks to which the defense forces took control of 7 villages. 2 more were cleared of enemy saboteurs, and in this way, our forces advanced 3 to 7 kilometers deeper into Russian defenses in various areas. And they also significantly increased our exchange fund. The Russians in Kupiansk will be cleared out just as they were in the areas of Dobropillia and Pokrovsk, where the enemy tried to encircle our forces. Instead, they are suffering heavy losses there. This is what President Zelensky shared during a meeting with journalists. The Commander-in-Chief says he is placing his hopes on the assault battalions, which are showing good results together with the drone component. On the eve of the visit to the US for the UN General Assembly, our side prepared the basis for security guarantees that Europe is ready to agree to, provided the US stands by us. This is something that needs to be clarified during the meeting with the American side, including with Trump. The same goes for the issue of new sanctions regarding the TRF, since there has been no progress towards a meeting between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations at the leaders' level. Meanwhile, the previous delegations are still in contact and are working on a new large-scale exchange. Ukrainian strikes on Russia in response are now just a matter of funding, since the production of long-range drones in Ukraine has become more large-scale, and the enemy has already felt their impact. The second one in a single night. In Russia, 2 large oil refineries are burning at the same time. On the night before Saturday, drones attacked yet another Russian oil refinery. This time in Novokuybyshevsk, Samara region, locals are actively posting videos of the bright glow from the fire. The Novokuybyshevsk oil refinery is one of the largest in the region and holds strategic importance for the enemy's army, since in particular it supplies fuel for jet aircraft and bombers. In addition, social media is actively spreading videos showing the aftermath of the attack on the oil refinery in Saratov, where it was also loud last night. The 19th package of European sanctions could be among the top 5 most powerful sanctions against Russia. That is how the new restrictions are being assessed on Bankova Street. The Commissioner for Sanctions Policy, Volodymyr Lasiuk, says that by the end of next week, the package is expected to be finally approved at the European Union Council meeting. The Ukrainian side hopes this will happen without any delays. More details about the new sanctions. Radio Liberty correspondent Zoriana Stepanenko will tell us more.
An EU refusal of Russian oil right now would, without exaggeration, be a sensation, something that is not included in the 19th package. However, it does include a refusal to purchase Russian liquefied natural gas, which is currently bought by a number of EU countries. The plan is to completely replace it with fuel from other suppliers or alternative sources. There was already such a plan, but the deadline was different, the end of 2027. Now, there is an idea to accomplish this by the beginning of that year, thus pushing Russian LNG out of here a year earlier. I should note that the previous plan had already been criticized by the EU countries most dependent on Russian fossil fuels, Hungary and Slovakia. Now, with the deadlines shortened and as part of the sanctions package, approval from all EU countries is mandatory. It can be assumed that they will resist. It is also proposed to add 45 Russian and foreign companies that support Russian exports, as well as another 118 ships from Russia's so-called shadow fleet to the blacklist. These are vessels that transport fuel in circumvention of existing restrictions. Among the proposals is also a ban on transactions with the largest Russian energy companies, Rosneft, Gazprom-Neft, and for the first time, as part of the fight against sanctions evasion, a ban on transactions in cryptocurrencies. The European Commission official maintains that EU sanctions are effective and that Russia's overheated wartime economy, quote, is operating at its limit.
When we speak with partners who maintain contact with Russia, we hear that one of Russia's primary requests is the easing of sanctions. We know that our sanctions are an effective tool of economic pressure, and we will continue to apply them until Russia sits down at the negotiating table with Ukraine to achieve a just and lasting peace.
Unlike previous packages, the 19th has several objectives at once. In addition to restricting Russia's revenues, which it uses to finance the war against Ukraine, it is also meant to demonstrate to American partners that the EU is doing its part. Donald Trump expects Europe to completely abandon Russian oil. Otherwise, he believes, here is a direct quote, the US president noted that if the price of raw materials falls, Russia will move toward a settlement in Ukraine. However, experts interviewed by Radio Svoboda are not certain about such far-reaching consequences of this decision, which has not yet been adopted.
Halting the supply of Russian oil to the EU would be a good step in the right direction, but it is not enough to completely stop Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and its financing. We need additional oil sanctions. Sanctions against natural gas have been relatively successful, and we need to strengthen them. For example, we know that Russian LNG worth billions of euros is still flowing into the EU.
The longer it takes the European Union to give up fossil fuels from Russia, the more time Moscow has to find other buyers, analysts note. They do not expect that the blow to the Russian budget as a result of the 19th package of sanctions will be devastating. The intrigue remains as to whether this round of restrictions will affect Hungary and Slovakia, which have not reduced their imports of Russian energy resources even during the full-scale war against Ukraine. The Financial Times has learned that in order to persuade Viktor Orban to agree to the sanctions, the European Commission may unfreeze about 550 million euros from EU funds for Hungary. Traditionally, the European Commission's proposals require unanimous approval from all EU countries. The discussion started today. From Brussels, Zoriana Stepanenko and Marek Hajduk, Radio Svoboda, especially for TSN 1+1.
To establish a military-civil administration in Odesa and remove the mayor from office. With these demands, military personnel and veterans gathered outside the city council building, saying there are legal grounds for this. Since Odesa was officially included in the list of cities where hostilities are taking place, the participants of the rally made an appeal to the president public and plan to create a corresponding petition. They say that Hennedy Trukhanov refuses to fund local territorial defense brigades, stalls decommunization, and facilitates corrupt schemes to evade mobilization.
He doesn't allocate funds, that's one thing. He consistently insults our brave military. After explicitly promising to allocate a substantial sum of 100 million, he only actually gave a mere 5 million, which quite frankly isn't even remotely enough for a single essential FPV drone to adequately protect our valiant Cossacks. If absolutely no one provides any assistance, how exactly are our dedicated Cossacks supposed to effectively shoot down incoming enemy drones?
He continues to promote Russian imperial myths even on the international stage. We saw this special operation on the 303rd anniversary of Catherine the Great, when the mayors of European municipalities congratulated Odessa on its fake birthday with him. Even on the international stage, we see that the mayor is causing great harm. In the 3 years since the full-scale invasion, there have been plenty of statements and actions by various Hennedy Trukhanov that were anti-Ukrainian.
City Day under shelling in Kherson region. This is almost a daily reality for the locals. Today, 6 settlements are celebrating their anniversaries at once, as shown in a video made by the regional military administration. You can see them in their prime, when the streets were blooming and the buildings were intact. Kherson is celebrating its 247th anniversary and Beryslav its 241st. These 2 cities have withstood the onslaught of the occupiers, and the cost of that can be seen in the destroyed buildings and streets. Kakhovka, Hanychinsk, Kalanchak, and Hornostaivka, which were also supposed to celebrate City Day while under temporary occupation, are now honored in the military park of Kherson, a city that will forever remind us of the true price of freedom. This morning, flowers were laid. The regional center is under enemy shelling every day. It is hit by artillery, attacked by drones, and bombarded with explosives dropped from UAVs. Just the day before, there was a large-scale fire there due to a Russian attack. Firefighters extinguished it under the threat of renewed shelling, and today Kherson was once again under attack. For over a year now, the enemy has been unsuccessfully trying to capture the Antonivsky Bridge. The hardest situation is for the residents of the Korabelny district, who have been left without water, gas, or electricity. They were evacuated, but there are still those who return to their native villages despite the dangers. The occupiers are remotely mining the area with petal mines, but life goes on there despite all their efforts.
Kherson and Beryslav have endured and defended their freedom. Today they continue to live and hold on despite daily shelling. Kakhovka, Hanychinsk, Skadovsk, and Hornostaivka are temporarily occupied by Russia. But even now you preserve the Ukrainian spirit. You can feel it. I am confident that the time will come when we will meet again in the squares of our cities under the blue and yellow flags. And together we will celebrate Ukraine's Victory Day. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. And you can also join in congratulating the resilient people of Kherson. Write a few kind words in the comments and share what comes to mind when you remember peaceful Kherson. Meanwhile, I will continue releasing the episodes.